Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi zidni ilma. I welcome you all today to the webinar by International Open University Sindh Committee. Today we have with us Brother Hashir, who will be going to speak upon the topic faith over traumas. First of all, I'm going to introduce myself. I am your host for today, Mahnur Ilyas, and I am currently studying Arabic language from IOU. I have with me Sister Sahar, who is the chairperson of our committee, also studying Islamic studies at IOU. IOU was founded by Dr. Bilal Phillips, and this university was, previously known as Islamic Online University, and the aim of Dr. Bilal Phillips was to spread Islamic knowledge. Basically, we have a lot of degrees from BA and MA too. The vision was to incorporate Islamic knowledge into universities, which most universities forget about, and they don't even mention Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in their curriculum at all. So the purpose was to basically spread the Islamic knowledge through worldly educational programs. The major available in our campus, on our campus, are basically Islamic studies, psychology, information technology, economics, business administration, and Arabic language. We have other programs as diploma too. IOU also offers the HIBs from its, platform. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you an opportunity so you can start HIBs from IOU's Global Quran Memorization Center too. And you can improve your tajweed also. Then we have IOU being introduced in Urdu language, which is offered by the IOU Urdu campus, of course. So we have a lot of local speakers as well who are going to assist in the Urdu language through different courses, of course. And the best part about this university is that you can learn everything from your home, from your couch. Then we have Brother Hashir. So Hashir Ibn Akram is one of the graduates of Bayyina Institute, which is renowned for Quranic and Islamic study and Arabic studies, of course. And he is also the founder of Ru'ya organization, which he focuses on, promoting Quranic teachings. Moreover, he speaks upon topics to lead a productive lifestyle for youth. We have Brother Hashir.
Okay, should I share my screen, inshallah?
Yeah, sure, inshallah.
Uh, Okay, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I hope you all can hear my voice clearly and you also can see the screen. You can just mention in the chat. I am just looking at the chat, or you can open your mic to tell me. Is my voice and screen visible? And here my
Yes,
voice
it
is
is.
hearable. Okay. اوكي نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه اللهم إني أسألك حبك وحب من يحبك والعمل الذي يبلغني حبك صدق الله العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. This is Hashir ibn Akram. I'm very glad and very thankful to the International Open University to to giving me this wonderful opportunity to share some words of wisdom with all of you, inshallah. And it is like I am myself inspired from such initiative of having students all around the world who are not only best in their worldly education, which is just so-called secular education, but they also know their grounding. That what is their grounding, right? For example, just to quote a simple example, what is the first thing that comes to our mind when we say, I am doing psychology? So when we say that I am doing psychology, um, people will tell you, and even the students of psychology will tell you, that we are studying the human behavior and mindset. Whereas the psychology, the word psycho, comes from the root, which means psyche, which is soul in Greek, right? So it was basically the study of soul, but we have changed that into something very worldly, and we are trying to say that, okay, like we can understand human behavior, we can understand the mindset of humans without bringing the conversation upon soul. And which is I which because being a clinical psychologist, I think it's not possible. You cannot master the human behavior or human mindset and the cognitive abilities by neglecting the soul. So I'm very thankful and very, interested in this initiative that what International Open University is doing for the students worldwide. And if they can give me chance, I will I will do masters from the International Open University, inshallah. After soon when I graduate from my clinical psychology degree. Okay, so in order to begin, inshallah, um, I would I would share two ayat from Surah Yusuf, and then we'll try to build a link between them, inshallah, and give my reflection on that. So, in order to begin, we all know that in our life we go through traumas. In our life we go through pain and sufferings. In our life we go through, you know, just a second. Okay. So we go through sufferings, we go through pain, we go through hardships in our life, which mold us in one way or the other. They define our problems, our life problems, the incidents that we go through, they define our behavior in our life. Because at the end of the day, we are always responding to the stimulus. For example, if your mom is trying to wake you up in the middle of night, beta, just wake up for the fajr or maybe wake up for tahajjud, and you are just responding to the stimulus. You might say, okay, mama, okay, give me 5 more minutes, give me 10 more minutes. I'm just waking up, just give, this, what is this? Your behavior is, mostly responding to the stimulus, which means that in our life when we go through hardship, when we go through sufferings, when we go through pain, when we go through such traumatic experiences, it shapes our identity, it shapes our behavior, it shapes the way we think about this world, you know so when we go through these traumatic experiences, people think that their trauma can define them in future. you know they think that their hardships can define them. They think the way they behave is because of the hardships they went through in their past. They think the way their character, their identity, their behavior, their mindset, their thinking, whatever they think is just because what they went through in their past. And the term which is very, famous in our psychology circle is that X person went through childhood trauma. And we think that if, for example, that X person went through a childhood trauma, that's why he's introvert. If someone has this issue of anger, we think that, oh, so he went through this childhood trauma, that's why he's always angry. If someone is not into relations, if someone is not into in love, or maybe loving their parents, loving their siblings. So we say, okay, so he went through this childhood trauma, that's why he's like this. But Quran is telling us something else. Imagine Yusuf alayhi salam, he had a golden, and I would say he had a platinum lineage. Yusuf ibn Yaqub ibn Ishaq ibn Ibrahim alayhi salam. Such a beautiful lineage, right? Such a wonderful lineage. And yet he went through so much in his life, and still, after so many years, we would see in the Surah Yusuf, inshallah, that he is just amazing. The way he thinks about, the way he makes strategy, the way he communicates with people, the way he interacts with people around them, he is just amazing in whatever he is doing. Which shows us that Yusuf went through trauma in his childhood, but yet his trauma didn't define him in the future. But then the question is how? For example, Yusuf alayhi salam was 7 years old when his brothers took him to this well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَمَّا ذَهَبُوا بِهِ وَأَجْمَعُوا أَن يَجْعَلُوهُ فِي غَيَابَةِ الْجُبِّ وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِ لَتُنَبِّئَنَّهُم بِأَمْرِهِمْ هَذَا وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, when the brothers of Yusuf took Yusuf to this unknown land, and they tried to, they threw him in the well. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِ لَتُنَبِّئَنَّهُم بِأَمْرِهِمْ هَذَا. So we revealed to Yusuf that soon you will tell them بِأَمْرِهِمْ هَذَا, about whatever they did to you. وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. Yasir Qazi says that وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ here means that they don't know who Yusuf is. They don't know who Yusuf is and who Yusuf will become in future. So just imagine this. I would like to, uh, I would request you to just focus on this single word, fi ghayabatil jub, and try to understand what is fi ghayabatil jub. The jub in Arabic, because many of you would be students of Arabic, there are many words for well. For example, you have the word bi'r, you know, the bi'r also represents a well. So why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said al jub? And what is the difference between al-bi'r and al-jub? So al-bi'r is a well-built, well-organized well. For example, you see in these cities where the well is properly covered, it has bricks around it, it is well cemented. But when we talk about al-jub is a well which is not well organized. You can even say al-jub is something which is natural, and when it is natural, it is full of mud. The bottom neck of it is full of mud. You can have snakes there, you can have scorpions there, you can have different creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala waiting for Yusuf, in that well. So and ghayabat al-jub means the darkness of that well. So Mufassirun even said that here fi ghayabat al-jub we can also take it figuratively, which means that it can be they threw him, the brothers of Yusuf, threw Yusuf alayhi salam in a deep, dark psychological trauma. I know, realistically speaking, it is fi ghayabat al-jub, it is a well, but what is that well? It is darkness, it is full of trauma, it is full of stress, it is full of anxiety, it is full of fear, it is full of you know, depressive thoughts, because Yusuf alayhi salam didn't know how would he come out of that well. So it was such a deep psychological wound. But the moment Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said fi ghayabat al-jub, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then said wa awhayna ilayhi latunabbi'annahum. Then we revealed to Yusuf, which shows us the connection between the ghayabat al-jub and awhayna, which means that when Yusuf al-Islam went through this deep psychological trauma, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, we gave him the aid, we gave him the help, we gave him the counseling, and that is awhayna, revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. which shows that there's deep connection between faith and how faith can help you overcome the traumas of your life. So when Yusuf alayhi salam went through this situation, you might expect Yusuf alayhi salam to be someone who will grow up in future and will become very traumatized kid, someone who will be introvert, someone who is not competent, someone who don't know how to deal with the problems of life, someone who don't know how to interact with people, someone who don't know how to defend himself, and someone who don't know how to defend his chastity. But the case that the Quran is presenting is completely the opposite. In the upcoming ayat, you will see how Yusuf alayhi salam defends himself, how Yusuf alayhi salam interacts with people, how Yusuf alayhi salam is very intelligent and competent, how Yusuf alayhi salam tells the king that make me the finance minister because only I know how to deal with this situation. So you see confidence in Yusuf, you see competence in Yusuf, you see, someone who's very strong and intelligent. But how is it possible? Look around yourself and even look within you. We went through so much in our life which makes us less confident, less competent, and all of these negative things. But how Yusuf alayhi salam overcame this trauma, this very childhood trauma, where he is where he is separate from his beloved father, where he saw the anger and hatred among his brothers for him, where he saw this such a traumatizing experience in that well, where he saw the caravan coming and pulling him out and selling him for a very low price, where he observed that he is not even considered human, he is considered a product which is being sold in a very low price. So the question is how Yusuf alayhi salam overcame this traumatic experience. And now let me show you the second ayat from Surah Yusuf, which will help us connect to this. Okay, so when the wife of minister tried to seduce Yusuf alayhi salam, and Yusuf alayhi salam said, "Qada ma'azallah, I can't do this. I can't do this. I don't want to do this." You know. So now the wife of minister is saying, قالت فذلكن الذي لمتنني فيه ولقد راودته عن نفسه فاستعصم ولئن لم يفعل ما آمره ليسجنن وليكون من الصاغرين. So the wife of minister is saying that yes, that now she is confessing in front of huge audience that yes, I tried to seduce Yusuf and nafsihi against his nafs. فاستعصم but he firmly refused. وَلَئِن لَمْ يَفْعَلْ مَا آمُرُهُ, and if he does not do what I order him to do, he will certainly be imprisoned. لَيُسْجَنَنَّ وَلَيَكُونَ مِنَ الصَّاغِرِينَ, and he will become from among the disgraced people. Now, try to understand this. Why this is such a huge test for Yusuf alayhi salam? Because when we go through, have you heard this word phobia? Have you heard this? Have you heard many people saying that, oh, I can't go into lift because when I was scared or when I was very little, I was in the lift and it was just blocked from all sides and it gave me such a traumatizing experience. Now I am afraid of entering the lift. Some people are afraid of heights, some are afraid of fire, some are. So we all carry the luggage of traumas on our shoulders, and then we try to avoid the triggers because we know that these triggers can take us back to that trauma, which can make us feel very fearful and very unconfident. you know but Yusuf al-Islam here is again reminded of that trauma. That she is saying, وَلَئِن لَمْ يَفْعَلْ مَا أَمُرُهُ, whatever I want you to do, if you don't do it, لَيُسْجَنَنَّ. Lam here is for ta'kid, for emphasis. لَيُسْجَنَنَّ, the noon also, the second noon is also for the emphasis. I will surely send you to prison. And if you see this documentary that they have made recently, the Egypt government, where they're showing where was that prison. That prison is below the ground level. It is full of darkness. It was full of mud. It was, full of, like, it was giving him that same experience that he went through in that well, which means that this dialogue of the wife of minister was a trigger for Yusuf alayhi salam of that childhood trauma. If you don't do, boy, what I am telling you to do, I will send you to the prison. And which was a trigger for Yusuf alayhi salam that, okay, if I go back to that well, if I go back to that prison, it will remind me of that well, which means now he will try his best not to go in that prison, because it is that trigger for him, which can trigger that childhood trauma. But now imagine how faith elevates you, how faith helps you being someone who can overcome the traumas, how faith can help you, you know, rise above your traumas, your stress, your depression, your anxiety. Because Yusuf alayhi salam said, قال رب السجن أحب إلي مما يدعونني إليه وإلا تصرف عني كيدهن أصب إليهن وأكن من الجاهلين. He said, Ya Rab, this prison, which is trigger for me, which can trigger my childhood trauma, which that lady is trying to, make me, which she's trying to send me, even though it is a trigger for me, but it is more beloved to me than whatever she wants me to do. أحب إلي مما يدعونني. Ya Rab, I accept my trauma. I accept my trigger, but I don't want to do something that is not pleasing to you. And what is that? This is the core definition of faith. Whatever we do, we try to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we will, in our life, we will have different opportunities. We will have opportunity to do something that is not pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And at that same time, we will have the opportunity to do something that is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we choose to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will elevate us in our ranks. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless us with the strength of faith and iman, which will help us overcome our traumas, overcome our weaknesses. قال رب السجن أحب إلي مما يدعونني إليه. Yusuf al-Islam could have said, Ya Rab, just just save me from this prison. I don't want to go back into such experience which will remind me of that well, which will remind me of that childhood trauma. But he said, no. Ya Rab, I don't want to I don't want to do something that is not pleasing to you. For that I can even accept my triggers. For that even I can go into my childhood trauma. I could re-experience, because when he would re-experience that childhood trauma, he would also experience that the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helped him in the prison, in the well, he can also help him in the prison. The way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helped him through the rope of that caravan, which helped Yusuf Islam pulling out of that well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can also help him in the prison. So, we do this exercise with our kids, in with our students at ROI organization sometimes. that, and I do this personally also, that I write my problems in my journal. For example, if I was last year, if I was going through, let's say, anxiety, I would have written that. Okay, on this date, I am going through this. This is very traumatic. This is very, hard. I'm suffering this and that. But after sometimes when you reflect back and see that journal with that issue stated or that problem stated on that piece of paper, you see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had helped you in that situation. Which reminds you that if now I'm going through something, I will refer back to that page and that journal to see that at that time I was also going through such traumatic experience, such painful experience. But who helped me in that time? And the answer would be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helped me in that situation, He can also help me now. You know, um, I just love the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains and mentions Musa alayhi salam, one of the most mentioned prophet in the Quran. While mentioning Musa alayhi salam, we know that Musa alayhi salam's mother Musa is also mentioned in the Quran. And Musa tries to save Musa alayhi salam from the Pharaoh, from Fir'aun, and she is like almost throwing away her kid in that box into the river, right? But what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying in that surah? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that we strengthened the heart of Musa after that, which means that only if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses you and your heart with the strength, only then you can bear the traumas of your life. Only then you can go through such a traumatic experience and still say inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. So what are we learning here? Yusuf alayhi salam went through so much in his life. He went through a childhood trauma, but he didn't let that childhood trauma define him in the future. We all, you know, in the Muslim community had enrolled themselves in this such a horrible curriculum, which I called the psychologically limiting program, PLP, psychologically limiting program. We have enrolled ourselves in this program where we have limited our capacity, our potential by defining ourselves with the past, by letting our past define ourselves. When you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is someone who is loving, someone who is Al Jabbar, the mender of the broken hearts, someone who is Rahman, the ultimate merciful, someone who is, Al Wudud, someone who loves you, someone who is Al Fatah, the opener of the closed doors. If you know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how can you be depressed? How can you feel low? How can you be hopeful or hopeless? We are people of faith. And when we say that we are people of faith, we have to see the difference between those who are people of faith and someone who is, ghafil from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, someone who's ignorant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he's lacking the faith. We have to see the difference. If you are depressed and the kafir or the disbeliever is also depressed, if you are hopeless, and if you're that person who is without faith or someone who's a disbeliever is also hopeless, if you are, struggling with your life and that other person is also struggling with life, then tell me, how is your faith helping you? How is your iman helping you? How is your iman defining you? We have to be the people of resilience. You know, the Palestinian uh, genocide is giving us such a beautiful lesson that you cannot defeat people of faith, even with your machineries, even with your technologies, even with your assets, even with your financial stability. You cannot defeat the people of faith, because we are the people of faith. We have the examples of Badr, we have the examples of Uhud, we have the examples of Fateh Makkah. What is happening in Badr? We are just 313. And in the opposition, we have 1,000 people who are trying to just eat us. But who wins in the end? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Anfal, إِسْتَسْتَغِيثُونَ رَبَّكُمْ فَاسْتَجَابَ لَكُمْ أَنِّي مُمِدُّكُمْ بِأَلْفٍ مِّنَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ مُرْدِفِينَ وَمَا جَعَلَهُ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بُشْرَى وَلِتَطْمَئِنَّ بِهِ قُلُوبُكُمْ وَمَا النَّصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. When the Muslims asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أَنِّي مُمِدُّكُمْ بِأَلْفٍ مِّنَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ مُرْدِفِينَ. I am sending 1,000 angels one after other. And then Allah said, وَمَا النَّصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. The help is from no one except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So brothers and sisters, we have to hold back our iman. We have to be the people of faith. We have to be someone, we have to be someone who lets his faith define them, not their past, not their traumas, not their problems, not their sufferings. The only thing that can define us is our faith. And faith defines us as someone who is resilient, someone who is strong, someone who is confident, someone who is someone whose heart is filled with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, someone whose heart is filled with the love of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, someone whose heart is filled with, with confidence, with bravery, with resilience, with love. So this is how we will let faith define us. So, what is the lesson that we are getting in these? I have shared two ayat with you. So, what is the lesson we are getting here? The lesson is very simple, that faith is above trauma. Very simple. Faith is above trauma. Write it somewhere on your desk, on your book, on your journal, even on your wallpaper, that faith is above trauma. Faith is above trauma. No one can define you. Nothing can define you except your iman and faith and the connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even in Badr, the Sahaba used to say that Badr was one of the most difficult time in the history of Muslims, right? So Prophet ﷺ said that, okay, uh, would you still like to fight? We have 1,000 people, 1,000 enemy. Would you still like to fight? And Miqdad radiallahu, obviously the first one was Abu Bakr. He stood up and said, Ya Rasulullah, we will fight. Umar stood up and said, Ya Rasulullah, we will fight. Ali radiallahu ta'ala stood up and said, we will fight. You know. Then Prophet ﷺ said, someone else? Is there someone else who wants to fight? Then Miqdad radiallahu ta'ala anhu stood up and said, Ya Rasulullah. And he gave such an amazing speech. He said, Ya Rasulullah, we are not Bani Israel, who used to say, O Musa, you should go with your Rabb and fight. And when you win, let us know, we will come back. We will come to pick up the booty of the war. So we are not Bani Israel. If the enemy reaches you, he has to go through us. Our dead bodies would be lying in front of you, behind you, to your left, to your right. Only then he can reach out to you. So Prophet ﷺ said, okay, amazing. Is there anyone else? And everyone was like, we all want to fight. But actually, even Hazrat Miqdad radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Hazrat Abu Bakr, Umar, Ali, they were all muhajirun. Prophet ﷺ wanted to listen to Ansar, you know, and Ansar, so Sa'd radiallahu ta'ala anhu intelligently realized this, and he stood up and said, Ya Rasulullah, we are people of Medina. We are people of Medina. If you if you want us to run towards enemy, all people of Medina, even our kids, will run towards the enemy. If you tell us this is fire, just go and jump into this fire. We will not think twice and we will jump into fire. So Ya Rasulullah, we are with you and we will fight. So you have to understand that the principles of this world are different from the principles of Iman and faith. The whole world will tell you that the people with greater army, the people with great weaponry, the people with great military forces will win. But Islam will tell you that people with faith will win. People with Iman will win. People with tawakkul will win. People with sabr will win. So, you know, we have to know that obviously in this dunya we have to put some efforts. We have to see the ground realities. But we have to it is one of my friends said this, and this is so amazing, that we have to be delusional in our prayers. We have to be delusional in our prayers. Ask yourself, why can't you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make you the prime minister of your country? Because you think, oh, this is too big of a thing to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Which means you are defining Rabb. You are defining Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He can give you chocolate, but He cannot give you the kingdom. Which means that your guman with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not not up to the mark. So know this, that in our life we will go through sufferings, we will go through pain, we will go through moments in our life which in which we would say, in which we would think that okay, this is the last moment and I cannot stand up after this. But we have to know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always there to help you. But you have to be someone who believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like Musa alayhi salam. When people said, oh Musa, we are captured from all sides. In front we have ocean, in on our back we have Pharaoh with this great army. But Musa alayhi salam said, no, I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with me and He will guide me, He will help me. So you have to bring the heart of Musa. You have to have the heart of Yunus alayhi salam. You have to have the heart of Yusuf alayhi salam. You have to have the heart of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam in terms of yaqeen and tawakkul and hope from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you have such high expectations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will never let you down. Allah will never ever let you down. Allah will always help you. So the practical steps to have such great faith that helps you overcome your traumas and your sufferings of your life. Here are a few practical steps that I want to share with you. The number one is knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you can know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through many, sources and many ways. But to begin with, I would recommend you I would love to recommend knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through his attributes, Asmaul Husna. And you can read many books on this. For example, if you are a Urdu reader, you can read Asmaul Husna by Ibn al-Qayyim rahimullah. This is a book in Urdu, also translated in Urdu. If you want to read it in English, so you have Reflecting on the Names of Allah by Jinan Yusuf, and also 99 Names of Allah by Imam Ghazali rahimahullah. These two books are one of my are my favorite, and they will help you know who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And once you the first step was to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through his attributes. And once you know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through his attributes, call out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with his names. For example, you are stuck in a situation where you want the signal to open. Just ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Rab, you are Al-Fattah, you can open the signal. You know? For example, you want to buy something but you have financial constraints. You can ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Rab, you are Al-Fattah, you can open this door for me. You can remove the constraints. So the first step is to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through his names, and then asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, calling out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through his names. Number two is having a very good knowledge of Quran, having connection with the Quran, which I define the connection with the Quran as something which will help you even in your problems. So whenever you have a problem in your life, try to find the solution in Quran. This is your connection with the Quran. And in order to have a very good connection with the Quran, you have to have very good knowledge of Arabic. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Yusuf, ayah number 2 or ayah number 3, that we read Quran in Arabic so that you can understand. We read Quran in Arabic so that you can understand. So the second step is having a very good connection with the Quran, and you can have very good connection with the Quran by memorizing it, by knowing it, by memorizing the vocabulary, by learning Arabic, you know. And number three is having good sohbah, having good companionship. If you are trying to get married this year, try to get married to someone who is good in faith. If you are moving out to a new city, try to be close to a community that fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you're going to choose university this year or maybe college this year, try to choose a college or maybe university where you can find good people around you. So the third step is having very good companionship. Very good companionship. And number four is having no one can I think many when you listen to Islamic scholars, they might just tell you to read Quran, dhikr, subhanallah, astaghfirullah, but I think that self-help skills are also very important, with obviously with Quran, with hadith, with ilm, with Islam, with iman, with faith. Everything is important, but we also have to know the importance of productivity in our life. Be someone who's very productive, someone who manages his time like crazy, like amazing time management. And last but not the least, have a very good knowledge of Sirah. You cannot know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until unless you know who your prophet was. So have a very good knowledge of Sirah, the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because when you will go through hard times, and if you have the knowledge of Quran and Hadith and Sirah, you would have so many things that will counsel you. You will have so many resources that will help you come out of your situations and hardships. So this is how we can rise above our traumas. This is how faith is above traumas. This is how faith can help you overcome the traumas. So if you have any questions, I would love to answer. Barakallahu fikum, jazakallahu khair.
Barakallahu feek. So we have one question here. Why is it such a common belief um, in psychology, in modern psychology, about linking childhood traumas with whole personality of a human being?
Okay, so when you enroll in any program of psychology, or you try to have or not even enrolling in program, but let's say you are trying to have knowledge of psychology, you will go through many theories. Everyone try to explain and give a rationale behind our behavior, that why we behave in such a way, why we behave the way we behave, why we think the way we think. So someone says that, for example, your childhood experiences, shape your identity. Your childhood experiences shape your identity. If you are born in, if, for example, you have to know that, in psychology, I would tell you four domains. For example, the first domain is, your um biological, your biological domain. The second is your psychological domain, the third is your social domain, and the fourth is your spiritual domain. Whenever you face a problem, just check yourself in these four domains. Is there any biological issue? For example, many people would have stress because they have this constipation, maybe, you know. So just check with the biological issue. For example, many people would feel low because of the hormonal imbalances. So it is not important or necessary that if you're feeling something, it is only because of a psychological issue. It can be a spiritual issue, it can be a biological issue, it can be a social issue. So many people, and when we say a social issue, it means our surroundings. So some people had linked this human personality, human behavior, human thinking, with their social interactions. So if you're born to a broken family, which means, yeah, that your father is abusive, or maybe your mother is abusive, or maybe, they're always fighting, it will make you something who will, maybe in future, the psychology tells us that maybe in future this boy becomes someone who's also abusive towards his wife. So this is the one of the theory. Okay? Someone would say, no, social interactions are, they also mold us into someone who we are, but basically it is our own thinking. It is our own, and that thinking comes from cognition, and that cognition comes from knowledge that we seek or observe. So there are different, theories that are linked to, that tries to explain why we behave the way we behave.
Jazakallah khair. Okay, so before we move on to the next question, we have an exciting announcement. We are going to have an Eid Mela on behalf of the Sindh Committee of IOU. So you all are invited on 5th of April from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. We have got a lot of stalls, as well as we have got a Karat competition for kids, which we have the grand prize as a bicycle, and we have art competition as well. So you're most welcome to join us. Okay, so now moving on to the next question. How can someone distinguish between a crisis of faith and the emotional effects of unresolved trauma, especially when they still want to love and trust Allah but feel overwhelmed by fear and doubt?
Okay. There's a famous quote by Yasmin Mujahid. She says that whenever you are suffering in your life, whenever you are going through a pain that is an unending pain, it is a sign that something needs to be changed. You know, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, out of His love and concern, is giving you a sign that something needs to be changed. So, it is, you cannot link, emotional, challenges of your life with, always with Islam, because sometimes it is very common. It is very, obvious. For example, if someone is facing financial problem, it is not it does not shows that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is not pleased with him. So the ease of your life does not mean that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is pleased with you. And the sufferings of your life does not show that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is not pleased with you. So Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is saying, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. We will test you with fear, we will test you with hunger, we will test you with, while you lose your assets, or family members, while you lose your, while you don't get the reward of your hard work. وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ, and give glad tidings to those who do sabr. you know so try to understand this, that when you face emotional challenges, they are here to make you strong emotionally. For example, until unless you don't pick up a 2 kg dumbbell, you would not be able to pick 3 kg dumbbell. You have to train your muscle. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows an emotional challenge to head towards you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to train your emotional muscle. Because this life, this dunya is not Jannah. And when you will try to make this dunya be something which it is not, i.e. Jannah, then you would always, you know, you will always be, you would be never satisfied with your life, because you have very weird expectations of this dunya. So this dunya is, this world is a place where we would be tested, where where we would go through pain and sufferings. And so this is just to, conclude my answer, that your emotional challenges does not reflect that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not pleased with you. So I would even argue that your emotional challenges reflects that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is training you for something bigger in your life.
Jazakallah. Now we have another question. When someone's faith is shaken due to emotional abuse, such as being repeatedly told that Allah hates them or uh, they are punishment to them for their sins, they are being punished them for their sins. How can they separate that pain from their relationship with Allah? How can they rebuild their faith and heal from the trauma without feeling purposeless?
Okay, so this is a very good question. Uh, before I answer this directly, we have to define the relationship between the abd and Rabb. What is our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We think that if we commit sin in Fajr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will punish us in the Isha. We think, oh, I got a car accident. Oh, it might be because I missed, I skipped Fajr. I had a very hard day today. It might be because of the sin that I did yesterday. No, this is not how the relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala works. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not an examiner who is sitting over your head and he is so happy to punish you. No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you. And when someone tells you that, oh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not pleased with you, just tell them shut up. Just shut up. Because your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is defined by the efforts you are putting in that relation. Sometimes we are putting so much effort, but we don't see the results. Sometimes you want to leave a sin, you try every day, but you can't leave that sin. It does not mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now hates you. It can even show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not result oriented. He is effort oriented. And we have to be the people of someone who pursue efforts, not results. You have to try each and every day and try to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with your actions and intentions. And secondly, uh, this problem arises, the root cause of this problem is that the first thing that I mentioned, that we don't know who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Now when the lecture ends, inshallah, or maybe whenever you got some time, just read Al Wudud from a book, the reflecting on the names of Allah, or maybe Al Ghafur from that book, or read it from anywhere you want, and you will understand how merciful Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Quran, Qul ya ibadi allazina asrafu ala anfusihim la taqnatu min rahmatillah inna Allah yaghfiru dhunuba jami'a innahu huwal ghafur rahim. Tell those who have crossed their boundaries, tell them la taqnatu min rahmatillah, don't be hopeless from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will wipe all of your sins, because He is Al Ghafur and someone who is merciful. So when you know who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, then no one can, ruin your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by defining, by defining your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Okay, so we have another question. Uh, when to take the therapy for anxiety? Is only Islamic conservation is enough? But we need to take psychological therapy?
Okay, another good question. The answer is same. Uh, when do you know you need to visit a doctor? For example, if you have injured your hand and your hand is bleeding, would you say that Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim and Surah Fatiha is enough for that wound to get healed? No, you go through a process. You go to a doctor, you have an appointment, he will treat you, give you medicines, and with all of that, obviously you are also in contact in relation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help you and heal you. Same is the situation with your emotional problems. If you have anxiety, if you have social anxiety, if you have depression, if you have if you have hallucinations or maybe delusions, the first thing is faith. The faith is helping you, the faith will help you, but also you have to go through therapies. So don't make it, we have made this, the word therapy, very weird. That's why we don't like therapy. It's like visiting your doctor. Maybe it's whenever I just want to know myself more, I visit my psychologist. I just sit there and she's asking me questions, I'm trying to answer them. And in those question answer session, in that, this is called a therapy session, I try to know myself more. I'm more conscious about myself and my thoughts. That's it.
Jazakallah khair. Now we have another question. Um, how can we support individuals who are struggling to reconcile with their faith while suffering from trauma?
How can we support individuals who are struggling to reconcile their faith while suffering from trauma?
Yeah.
Okay, again the answer is same. Trauma cannot define you. For example, if the answer is very simple, and again I would use that analogy. If someone is going through cancer, how would you help him be strong in his faith? Simple, because by telling him who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, by telling him how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can help you, by telling him how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is healing you and how he can heal you. Say for example, if someone is going through trauma, how can we say that his trauma will stop him from being someone who is more Islamic? No, no one can stop you, not even your traumas. Even Islam and Iman and connection, or maybe relation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is is the solution to get out of your traumas. One of the biggest solution to come out of your traumas. So simply by giving them support, by helping them, by helping them into go into therapies, by telling them who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, by teaching them Quran, everything can help them.
Now we have another question. If someone feels afraid to make dua because they believe every request turns into a test, is this a sign of weak faith, or could it be a result of emotional trauma shaping their perception of Allah's response? And how can they rebuild the trust?
It is a sign that we don't know who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Let's say if I am someone who is, let's say, uh, who is trying to, let's say, buy a car, okay? And if I want to buy a car, and if I'm asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, please, Allah, give me a one Mustang GTR with 12 valve engine and this and that, it does not mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will now test me. It is, if you ask your mom to, make a sandwich for you, would it mean that she will test you now? If you ask your father to gift you, an Apple Watch, does that mean that now he will now test you? The way you believe that your mother and father loves you, and they are always concerned about you, and even if they stop you from something, they come from a point of concern and love. Same is the like same even I would say that the case with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is even greater than that in magnitude and frequency. If you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for something and He gives you, it is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you have to show gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for something and He delays it, it means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that this is not the correct time to give you something. You know what is sabr? Sabr is, sabr is submitting to the timeline of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sabr is submitting to the timeline of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not not arguing about your own timeline. Ya Rab, I want marriage to happen this year. Ya Rab, I want you to give me car now. This is not sabr. This is not sabr. Sabr is when you submit to the timeline of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That, oh Allah, if you think this is not the correct time for me to have a car, okay, I would wait. فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ وَاللَّهُ الْمُسْتَعَانُ. Okay. Any other question?
Thank you for adding so much insights. We have one last question. How to find out if it's a clinical issue and to take medicines and not faith issue?
Okay. In order to, in order to find out if you are going through a clinical issue and you should take medicine or not, you should visit a professional. So you should visit a professional, and that's why for example, I have been providing one-to-one therapy session, one-to-one sessions, and coaching sessions from the, like, past 6 to 7 or 8 months, because I realized that that many people don't find, they don't find good Islamic psychologists. They go into the therapy session, and that person they have had an appointment of, he is just talking about dunya. Okay, you have this issue, you have this issue, you have this issue, and completely neglecting the spiritual side. So we need more people in Islamic, in psychology, who are also religion oriented, who are God oriented. Their center of their focus, their focus and center of attention is not only dunya but also faith and Islam and even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So I think they should visit a professional, and after clinical interviews and diagnosis, if they need to go through a medicine or maybe therapies, she or he would recommend them. And if there's any faith issue, you would now, if you would understand if this is a faith issue or not yourself, because if there's no clinical issue, you would now understand, okay, maybe it's a spiritual issue. Because you know there is there's a fitra inside of you that tells you, are you doing something good or bad. you know there's fitra inside of you. For example, if you're doing something bad, your heart will tell you that, habibi, this is not right. Okay, so your heart is also always helping and telling you, inshallah.
Okay, so I think we are done with the question answers. I hope there aren't any others. Yes. So let's conclude. Okay, so we have these contact numbers and also our email address and the website. You can visit us, find out more about our diploma courses and our bachelor's program, master's program, and many others. And also, the chairperson is Sister Sahar, as I mentioned before, and secretary is Brother Ammar. You can also always contact them for any purposes regarding the IOU. Then we have, okay, I think just one last question. I'm so sorry, but we have one more question. When we are visiting a psychologist, what are the things we should take into notice so that we are not misguided from the teachings of Islam? Like psychologists may not be affiliated with Islam, as you mentioned, or maybe the practices they suggest are not faith aligned.
Okay. um when you know about when you know your Islam, no one can misguide you. The problem arises when you don't know who the subhanahu wa ta'ala is and what Islam is. So when you are not working hard to know what are your Islamic teachings, then anyone can misguide you. Even the rickshaw driver can tell you, Auntie, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not exist. Why the person on the money, the Qaid Azam, he is the God, some weird, weird things. So even he can misguide you. But when you know what the subhanahu wa ta'ala is, what Islam is, when you have went through the curriculum of Quran and Hadith, then no one can misguide you. For example, if I go to if I go to a psychologist and she is completely secular, and she is telling me this and that and this and that, I would try to I would try to accept what is right and what is beneficial for me. But if she is saying something that is, or he is saying something that is against the teaching of Quran, for example, if I go to a psychologist and he or she tells me that I think you can be better if you can talk to na mehram for 1 hour, 1 hour in a day, it means that I would say, okay, uh, this is not something that I would buy. I'm not buying whatever you are saying. Okay. So when you know about your Islam, no one can misguide you. So try to know more about Islam, inshallah.
Okay, the person who asked this question minds calling her auntie in your example of rickshaw drivers. Okay, well, now we are concluding, inshallah. So you can recite the dua, of course.
Okay. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين يا ذا الجلال والإكرام يا حنان يا منان يا حي يا قيوم. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. اللهم إني أسألك حبك وحب من يحبك والعمل الذي يبلغني حبك. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وقنا عذاب القبر وقنا عذاب الحشر وقنا عذاب الميزان. اللهم حبب إلينا الإيمان وزينه في قلوبنا وكره إلينا الكفر والفسوق والعصيان واجعلنا من الراشدين واجعلنا من الراشدين واجعلنا من المجاهدين واجعلنا من المهتدين واجعلنا من المتوكلين. Ya Rab, Ya Rab, Ya Rab, Ya Rab, please forgive all of our sins, Ya Rab. Ya Allah, please forgive all of our sins, Ya Rab. Ya Rab, we need guidance from you. Ya Allah, please give us istiqamah on Sarat al-Mustaqim. Please give us istiqamah on Sarat al-Mustaqim. Ya Allah, you know the state of our hearts. You know Ya Rab, that we are filled with sins. You know we are always sinning, Ya Rab. But Ya Rab, we also know that you love us. Ya Rab, we also know that you love us. Ya Rab, we also know that you are not someone who will judge us. But Ya Rab, we need your help. We need your support. We need you to get out of our traumas. We need you to get out of our sufferings. We need you to get out of our pain. We need you to make our life such a wonderful example for the youth. We need you to help us be someone who is so inspirational, who can, heal people through the Quran, who can heal people from their sufferings, from their pain, from the problems of their life. Ya Rab, we don't want to end up our life without purpose. Ya Rab, please give us purpose. Please give us clarity of purpose. Ya Rab, please help the youth come out of these, such miserable situations. Ya Rab, we want you to help us in our ilm, Ya Rab. We want you to help us with our risk, Ya Rab. Ya Rab, even the organization and the team and the chairpersons and the organizers, all of please, Ya Allah, bless them with ilm, amal, and ikhlas, Ya Rab. The initiative that they have taken to help the youth come out of the darkness, min az-zulumat ila nur, please, Ya Rab, accept it and help them, Ya Rab. And in the end, Ya Rab, when we die and we are going away from our beloved ones, we want you to help us recite the kalima La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Barakallahu fikum, jazakallah khair everyone for having me. And if there was something that might have hurt you in any way, it was because of me, not the organization. And I just want to apologize for everything. If there's anything that had, impacted you in any negative way. Barakallahu fikum. Is there anything else, Mahnur?
We are just going to end the live streaming on YouTube. We just need 5 more minutes for that.
Okay.